Welcome to the Lifestyle First podcast, discussing lifestyle medicine and making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1 question, 2 research reviews, and 3 actionable health tips, all centered around the Lifestyle First method, your blueprint for the 10 key routes of optimal health and happiness. And now your host, lifestyle medicine physician and coach, Dr. Alka Patel.
Hello and welcome to Series 4, Episode 2. The theme in the Lifestyle First method we'll be exploring today is identity. So, ego, that 3-letter word really gets a bad name, doesn't it? It's because we immediately connect ego with being arrogant, self-centered, loud, the center of attention, pushy, uncaring. But I read some really interesting research this week, which is why I wanted to share with you the topic of ego, to think about how ego has impact and to introduce you to the paradoxical idea of a quiet ego. And so the one question I'm asking today is, how can you make a loud impact with a quiet ego? And the 2 articles I'll be talking about this week are based on the work of Heidi Wayment, one titled The Quiet Ego and the other The Quiet Ego Scale. And both these articles have been published in the Journal of Happiness Studies. So, what is your ego? Well, your ego is your I. It's the identity you create to help you navigate through life with a sense of self that is actually an important part of your identity. And your ego is very defensive about your identity. Its prime action is to protect you. It's your self-defense for survival. And so we all need ego to exist, to create that unique experience of being me, being you, to actually enable you to participate in life. It's your ego that plunges you forward into doing things you might have held back from. It builds bravado and confidence. But the flip side is that it can also push you into fear. Because when you're in a challenged state and your ego is at its most defensive, it overcompensates. Anything outside of your beliefs, your ideas, your thoughts will be strongly rejected by your ego. It then creates strong emotional reactions, false confidence, extreme competition, rapid rejection of others, constant comparison to others, judgment of others, over-analyzing, which then limits your experience of life. The self-defense mechanisms are amplified and turned up loud. Your ego can be a great asset, but it can also be a great drain. On the one hand, self-reflection, self-awareness, self-control, they're all essential human capacities. And on the other hand, your ego turns away from any responsibility for negative outcomes in your life. So what do we do about this loud, defensive, overprotective ego? Well, it turns out that the paradox of the quiet ego has much more positive benefit on your well-being, on your growth, on your health. Quiet is not silent. This is not about squashing your ego so that you lose your identity. Your identity is part of your survival mechanism. You're going to keep it. But the quiet ego survives by turning its volume down. The prime action of the quiet ego is to protect you by a less defensive mechanism, by cultivating an authentic identity to notice and listen to others without losing yourself, so that you can approach life much more compassionately. And in the research papers I've been reading this week, Heidi Wayment and her team have created a quiet ego scale, a way to measure how quiet your ego is in terms of its blend on focus on yourself and focus on others. And the questions in this measurement of your quiet ego are linked to 4 key characteristics, which I just wanted to share with you. Characteristic number 1 is detached awareness. So being aware of yourself and others without judgment. With a quiet ego, you have an engaged, non-defensive presence in the present moment. You're open to accepting what you discover about yourself and others. Characteristic number 2 is inclusive identity. So recognizing an interconnection and interdependence between you and others. With a quiet ego, you understand common humanity. This builds cooperation and compassion towards others rather than only working to help yourself. You can step into other shoes without compromising your own sense of self and see the interdependence between each other. Characteristic number 3 is perspective taking. So the ability to view life through a different lens and be accepting of other perspectives. You can maintain confidence in your own experience whilst also appreciating other perspectives. With a quiet ego, you increase empathy and compassion. And characteristic number 4 is growth-mindedness. So recognizing the importance of growth over time. Now, we all grow over time, and as we collect life experiences, we build empathy, kindness, compassion, and forgiveness for ourselves and others. With a quiet ego, you consider the long-term impact of the actions you take in the moment, and you view the present moment as part of an ongoing life journey instead of as a threat to yourself. And a good sign that you are growing is that your ego is quietening. Your quiet ego intertwines compassion with self-protection and growth. Your quiet ego brings with it humility, flexible thinking, open-mindedness, building relationships, the ability to savor everyday experiences, life satisfaction, and the feeling that life is meaningful. You have a firm sense of self-worth and value and don't need to resort to defensiveness. You take care of yourself just as compassionately as you take care of others. And that is how you make a loud impact with a quiet ego.
And now, here is your lifestyle first prescription. Your 3 activating actions to take you from knowing to doing.
So here are your 3 activating actions for today. Now, I hope I've ignited a curiosity in you to find out how quiet your ego is. So action number 1 is to take the Quiet Ego Scale questionnaire. This is a way to measure your compassionate self-identity. It's a short questionnaire and you can find it at www.quiet-ego.bleaker.co. So I'll add the link to the description for you. And it will give you a starting point from which to identify areas you might want to work on. Action number 2, get to know your ego. It's all connected to the word I. What do you say after the word I? This is your ego speak. Now, in last week's podcast, I spoke about intention. So set an intention this week to observe your ego with one conversation you have today. Notice everything you say after the word I. And action 3 is to notice when your ego is fragile, over-defensive, overcompensating. You're feeling stuck, you're finding it hard to connect. And when you notice this, try and change the perspective. Think about those 4 areas of a quiet ego: detached awareness, inclusive identity, perspective taking, and growth-mindedness. What can you change? And remember, the quieter your ego, the more you flourish. So that brings today's episode to a close. 1 question, 2 references, and 3 actions for you. I hope you have enjoyed today's insights. If you have, then it would be lovely if you could subscribe and share to this channel so that you too can help spread messages of health that make a difference. Which now leaves me, as always, to simply wish you a happy, healthy day.
Thanks for joining us on the Lifestyle First podcast, making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and we'd love it if you'd be kind enough to leave a review. To learn more or to arrange a consultation, please visit www.dralkapatel.com. See you next time.